Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Practicing My Way Back. It's Friday. I apologize I didn't get this out on Wednesday. I had some complications this week with scheduling. It just made it impossible to do it. But here we are, better late than never. It's been a pretty good week. I think I mentioned in the last video I was starting to do my church gigs again, which is pretty interesting and pretty cool. So I'm getting out there, doing some playing. Most interesting and kind of the point of my thinking this week is this past weekend was an interesting experience because I feel like my playing and my facility has gotten to a point where it's getting better, and now I'm really wanting more. So I have to be very careful because I'm at the point where things feel good enough, but they're not quite there, that I'm starting to feel some real honest-to-goodness frustration. And I have to say, it's the first time in this process that I've ever encountered that. Right from the get-go, it was fairly cut and dry, okay? Had a stroke, everything is severely reduced, and it's just, baby steps all the way back. I have to keep that mindset. I have to keep that mindset of baby steps all the way back. Just because I feel things are getting better doesn't mean I can try and rush ahead, although I certainly did. I also, I felt frustrated almost, and to the point where I found myself thinking, what if I never get back to where I was? And that's a separate question. I'm going to address that in a minute, but what I want to talk about is the frustration. Because I'm sure you feel that in some of your practices. You're just learning this instrument. You start to wonder. You start to feel, I'm never going to get this, or how can I do this? I happen to be reading a book about teaching. This book called The Music Teaching Artist's Bible by Eric Booth. It's a wonderful book. Very inspiring. And kind of processing what I went through over the weekend and what I'm currently going through with my playing, going, how can I encourage myself better when I'm not feeling up to it, when I'm not feeling like I'm playing as well as I'd like to be. And there's I think I showed you this before, where there's the idea of tracking all the things that you do and writing this stuff down, but this is fairly dry. And it struck me, it was one of those really brilliant moments. It struck me what to do, or an option anyway. This is what I did. I basically, using my sketchbook, I wrote down the word I feel, the statement I feel, with followed by 4 adjectives of how I was feeling. It doesn't matter, I didn't judge, I just wrote clunky, blind, unfocused, and sloggy. They're all negative. We're not focusing on that necessarily, but that's just what I wrote. Now, next to each one of those, I wrote kind of what I felt would be the opposite of that. So I came up with supple, full of vision, awake, and live. Okay? So the next thing I did was I wrote, I do this well. And then I picked 4 things that I felt I did well. And I won't go through these because I want to get through this today sometime. So with those 4 things, I then wrote next to them, where do those things come from? So for example, the first thing I wrote was, what do I do well? Hearing. I hear well. Hearing comes from listening. Okay, so now I have another pair of words. And then the last thing I wrote was, I'd like to get better. So then I wrote 4 things that I'd like to get better at. Now comes a bit where it's a little hard to explain, but bear with me. I basically, under each one of these 3 categories, I just started a word I liked. I picked a word, I wrote it down, and then crossed the word off, and then went to another category, picked another word that I felt went with it, crossed it off, and then went to another category. Basically, I turned this into kind of a poetry game where I looked on different ways to combine all these words, and I came up with the following little thing. Independent fingers creating, blind listening, steady playing, supple hearing, wanting to get better, unfocused reading, practicing, full of vision, lithe arpeggios, improvising, exercising, clunky light touch, sloggy, awake. And I put a little exclamation point at the end. And I drew a picture of a beatnik guy playing bongos, because that's what I do. the point is not to write a brilliant poem, but the point is, I think, to creatively process how you're feeling. Because the big thing that does is it makes you okay with it. You know, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to feel like you're not getting anywhere. Okay? The important thing is what do you do with that? Do you move forward from that, or do you get stuck in the feeling? This is one way not to get stuck in the feeling, because here it is. I've listed some fairly negative stuff, but I've turned it into a positive creative activity. You see? That's one way to do it. I am going to advocate you try this. In fact, I'm going to contact a friend of mine, a poet who I worked with at the Mali seminar, Brian Evans Jones. I know he's done lots of seminars with word games like this, so I want to get his feedback on it. But that's kind of what I opted to do with it, and I felt better about it. You know, there's going to be more times where I'm feeling like, well, I'm almost there but not quite, and that's going to be frustrating to me. And this is another fallback, and of course, documenting where you are is another fallback. But it's important to be reflective, and this is what I've gotten from Eric Booth's book that I mentioned before. He has an opinion, and I agree with it, that we are in a very anti-reflective society right now. And that is really, it's heartbreaking, because reflecting on your experience, you don't learn from your experience without reflecting on it, and that's the point. So there it is. Look back on what you did and reflect on it for what it is. Anyway, that's what I got for you today. I will see you next week, pending no disasters, on Wednesday. So work hard and have fun. We'll see you next time.